Welcome to Quick Charge. It's November 15th, 2024, and I'm your host, Joe Boris. Today's episode is sponsored by Blue Eddy, a leading supplier of sustainable energy solutions specializing in portable power stations, solar generators, and energy storage systems. As a provider of dependable and portable energy solutions, Blue Eddy has become an industry leader with a presence in 100 countries that is trusted by millions of customers worldwide. Its portfolio of clean, portable energy solutions continues to grow, offering customers viable options for all uses and budgets. These solutions offer dependable power with plenty of plugs to connect devices. That portfolio includes the AC70, AC180, AC200L, and Blue Eddy's latest technology, the hands-free all-in-one backpack power station. Now through November 28th, save up to 52% on Blue Eddy products during its exclusive Black Friday pre-sale event. Explore all the deals at blueeddypower.com and be sure to use promo code BlueEddy5OFF for an additional 5% off all power stations site-wide. We'll have a link to that in the show notes and YouTube description. And because we're doing that advertisement at the beginning of the show, you already know that means this is a special interview episode of Quick Charge. Now, today's interview is really interesting because two new EVs are really resetting the stage for the American EV market. And I'm talking, of course, about the Chevy Equinox EV and the Honda Prologue, both of which combined to push EV market share to a new record in October, and they're doing the same thing in November, approaching 10% of the overall market nationwide. Now, this is important because not only are both of these 5-passenger, affordable, 300-plus mile range EVs, they're both based off of GM's Ultium EV battery platform, which means that the vehicles should be incredibly similar, or at least more similar than you might imagine, given the fact that they do look pretty different on the outside. So the question becomes, what makes a Chevrolet and what makes a Honda? And as you remove things like different displacement V8s, different transmissions, the kind of internal combustion hardware we're all used to, that becomes a question that more and more automakers are going to need to ask themselves. To help answer that question of what makes a Honda, what makes a Chevy, what makes an Acura, we've got Jason Hwang and Emilio Sanchez, both parts of the Honda team that developed the Prologue and the Acura ZDX and gave those vehicles their Honda-ness, their Honda feeling. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show and being a part of this. Hey, John Hwang, the chief engineer of Honda Prologue and Acura ZDX programs at Honda North America, and Emilio Sanchez, the electrical project leader. Guys, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So obviously, we're big fans of a lot of Honda's products and Acura as well. There's, a ton of motorsports history and enthusiast history behind those brands. But these two products, specifically the Prologue and the ZDX, these are interesting, right? Because they're not what a lot of people, I think, would call a, quote, pure Honda product, right? They were co-developed with GM. They use those Ultium batteries. Can you talk to us a little bit about what parts of this were developed by Honda and kind of the steps that you took to make it feel more like a pure Honda?
Yeah, let me start off with how we approach the entire development and exactly what you're talking about, and then maybe Emilio can give some examples in the electrical space. So when we started this co-development 4 years ago, the key was leverage the work that our partners already had done on that platform, the Ultium platform, and bring into market as quickly as possible, good EVs that we can have in the market this year. So that kind of set in motion the Ultium platform. So that's the battery pack, the powertrain, and then the hard points of that platform. And then from there, we really collaborated on what would make each brand or each car unique and different, because obviously we didn't want to have them be identical, right? You just put a new badge on it. So we kind of took all those hard points and we worked out what parts could be shared and what parts would be new. And that's kind of how we divided up the work. And then Honda took the lead in the design, the styling, the studio work, making sure that it is uniquely identifiable as a Honda or an Acura. And that's kind of how we started that work.
Yeah. Emilio, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I want to build basically off that. So what we did, and I think something really interesting for this program, right? You mentioned it, of course, we're collaborating with GM, but the placement of the elements. So when you look at the switches that we have in the car, the placement of the meter or cluster, the placement of the center display, where the HVAC controls are, all of that was basically done following Honda guidelines. Of course, there were areas where we had to do some trade-offs or whatever, but basically we wanted to have that Honda guideline there, to basically make the car feel or be usable, same as you would basically use any of our other cars. You can name it Honda Pilot, Odyssey, anything like that. So anything you can think of, from the placement of the cup holders, the power window switches, and most importantly, of course, I think the displays, both of them.
Yeah, and I think that that's, obviously critical because you're creating an identity here with something that doesn't have that traditional identity from the engine or from the powertrain, right? And I think this presents a very unique challenge from brand to brand, from automaker to automaker, on how you make an electric vehicle feel different. So obviously, we are talking a little bit about the Ultium platform here and how we're making it feel more like a Honda. How do you make a Honda feel different from an Acura, even when they have the same battery and the same powertrain?
For the Prologue and the ZDX, they are actually on a different powertrain and battery system. However, you're right. Even on a regular ICE Honda or Acura, you have to prioritize that feeling difference or the behavioral difference. Acura is all about sportiness and that performance aspect of it, not just how it drives, but also how it looks. So that's really how you differentiate. And Prologue, in being a Honda, is always going to be useful. It's going to be packaged very well, perfect for a young family and all their gear. So that's kind of the image, not only just the packaging and how big the interior is, but also how it looks and how it portrays that image of that target customer we're looking for.
Yeah, so basically for us, what was really important on the user interface or the HMI of the vehicle, right? So when you talk about Prologue, we of course started discussing what is the layout of the elements that we want to basically show the customer. So this is not talking about performance or anything like that. This is just more talking about how the car feels to the customer, right? With the things they are going to interact with. So when you look at the center display, for example, the choice of colors that we went with, the arrangement of the elements within that center display, we basically took elements from our current vehicles, but kind of like modernized them. So when you look at, again, a Honda Pilot, an Odyssey, a Passport, you will see the center display has little tiles with the apps, right? So we basically took that and then did the same thing for Prologue. But of course, with Prologue, we're going with a more like modern look. We're basically stepping away from that, from the black background on the center display and the meter. We're bringing, I don't know, like a lighter background, a more fun background, kind of like portraying that image of like, hey, this is a new car, this is the new path forward for us. And also like some small elements, right? For example, when you look at the at all the elements on the meter or the center display, the Honda font is there. The font, even though it's like something really small, something really tiny, the font is different. The font is the Honda font, so that makes it feel like a Honda when you look at it.
And also, there's something new. Like I don't know, Joe, if you noticed, as you walked up towards the car, there's a movie that plays when you walk up to the car, and we spent a lot of time kind of working on that movie to just make sure it portrays the newness and the beginning of this electrified era, and how we wanted to portray how we thought the customer and where the customer could use the car. It has outdoor kind of imagery, a city center imagery, and all kind of mixed in with the Honda logo at the end that really says, hey, this is an EV that you can use for your family's adventure anywhere.
Yeah, and I have seen that, and I think it does a really good job of painting this picture of, I don't know if accessibility is the right word, but it kind of says like, hey, we're along for the ride. We're here with you wherever your adventure is going to take you. And I think that it's a very different message from you meet the nicest people on a Honda, that, classic campaign from the 60s.
Right. I mean, it's all about being a partner and enabling the customer and their family and friends to do what they want to do. And really, this is an EV that has long range and, and good packaging, so you can load up all your gear. So really, there's no excuse for not being able to do what you want to do every day.
No, I love that. So I want to ask a question. We're talking about the hardware interface, the HWI, the GUI, and all the other stuff in there. So, two questions. General Motors, obviously the other partner that's using Ultium platform, they kind of are very famously walking away from things like Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Is the Honda Prologue, is the Acura ZDX, are those still vehicles that I'll be able to use those kind of phone based or third party interfaces with, or is this vehicle also kind of on a standalone platform?
No, the both cars have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wireless as well. And however, also as part of that Ultium platform, we do have Google Automotive Services. So that is also enabled and really does allow a full integration. So you have both. You can do both. So the owner can just use their CarPlay as they do on their Honda or Acura today, exactly how they want. But also, you can use the Google Automotive Services that's built in. So Google Maps and Waze and all that App Store stuff is already available, and they can download those things and use them. And it's really integrated well with especially the EV part of it. You can set the DC fast charger as your destination, and it conditions the battery pack. So it's really an effective way to use the car. So I've used both when I drive the car.
That is a key element. You're right. Like at least the Google Maps, having that integration. Google Maps will help you do the route planning. Find the charger if you're not gonna make it, on a long road trip or whatever. So I think that's key. That's a key element. Of course, as John was saying, the customer has the opportunity to go back to Android Auto or CarPlay, but then you're going to miss out on those features, those specific EV features. For example, my personal experience, I'm an avid user of Android Auto, but when I was driving CDX or Prologue, I was preferring to just log into my Google account, for Google Maps, and then just download a Spotify for the car, because that's basically what I use Android Auto for, Maps and Spotify, and then that was it.
No, that's a really solid point also, that if the functionality is there and it's one less connection, one less screen, you can still have that access. I think that works. I think that's a solid approach. Now, I know you guys can't talk too much about future product and upcoming product. I totally get that. But we have seen at the last CES show, we saw the Honda Zero, we saw some other EVs concepts that are coming our way. How have the lessons that you guys have learned working on the Prologue and CDX brands and learning how to make those vehicles feel uniquely Honda or uniquely Acura, how has that informed the upcoming Zero Series EV?
I would say the entire Honda organization, not just engineering, but manufacturing and sales and dealer network, I think they've learned a lot about how to get ready, or no, not, but maybe the Prologue and ZDX are how we got ready, because we had to change so many things on how we viewed the transaction or the sales and the promotion. So I think it really has been a great lead in and a stepping stone so that we are fully committed and ready when the Zero Series come out. So it's been an excellent opportunity for the entire Honda organization, including the dealer network.
From I guess one side, for example, when we talk about audio systems, Bang & Olufsen, the first one being the Acura CDX. Of course, we're basically keeping Bang & Olufsen as a partner. All the upcoming Acura BEVs are going to have that. And then on the Honda side, well, we're doing the same with our partner Bose. So I think those elements are certainly going to be there. Things like that, like small things like that, like menu structures. I think our team is looking at that, imagery that we are using currently on Prologue and CDX. They are trying to build off of that, basically.
Yeah, and actually, Emilio brings up a good point, Joe, is that, we have a new audio partner for Acura, Bang & Olufsen, and then we're continuing our relationship with Bose on the Honda side. And because they're an EV, the tuning, kind of the parameters and what you're trying to tune to in the background sounds are completely different. So we have learned quite a bit about, you have to take advantage of the fact that the car is so much quieter and smoother. So you can really make an impact on the Bose system or the Bang & Olufsen system that maybe was harder to accentuate in the past. So it does bring up new opportunities.
Well, and that brings up a good point, because I think there have been systems in the past that have the auto volume. So when you're going down the highway, they raise the volume. When you're slowing down, they lower the volume. Is that still something that's in play in EVs? And I'm sorry if that's like a super elementary question.
Yeah, there's still some, that, but I forget the acronym for it, but that still does exist. Just because the kind of the tire noise and road noise that still exists. Yeah. So you still do need that. But it does completely change all the tuning parameters.
That's wild. I think, we're coming to the end of our time commitment here. I want to be respectful of that. And I know there's a ton of different questions I can ask you. I think, what I'm always surprised with when I talk to engineers, especially brand manager engineers who are working on platforms and platform design, is there's always some aspect that, as an enthusiast, as a journalist, as someone who's not, obviously anywhere near your guys' level of the technical development, that is always surprising and interesting. When you guys were developing this platform and kind of bringing it over to become a Honda from whatever it was before, what were kind of the biggest surprises on your side that made you say, like, either wow, this is really going to work and this is going to make a ton of sense, or like, man, this was really challenging to integrate this into the way Honda does things?
That's a great question. Emilio, you go first. Let me go think.
So I think the very first one, and probably the most obvious, is just merging working styles.
Yeah.
Just merging two working styles. We were, of course, at the end of the day, we, like both companies do or manufacture cars, right? So that's the end goal. At least the end goal was always the same. But just merging two styles, merging different people at different locations. I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges we faced at the very beginning. Having people here in the US, having people in Japan, then do we want them to come over? And we eventually got a lot of people from Japan to come here and went and work with us and work with GM here. So I think that one was a great win for both sides. Of course, we learned a lot, but also our partners at GM learned from us too. So I think it was a great collaboration there.
Now that actually brings up an interesting point, because this is not the first collaboration between GM and Honda. In the late 90s, early 2000s, there was the Saturn Redline edition that were GM products with Honda powertrains. Yeah. Before that, there was the Isuzu Trooper and the original Honda Odyssey that was based off of the Isuzu minivan, which were both GM products. I mean, obviously, you guys were probably children when that happened, so I don't think I
don't know about that. I got to tell you, one of the earlier projects I worked on at Honda was integrating OnStar onto Acura models.
Oh yeah, because that's a GM product too. Yeah,
it's not my first time either.
That's awesome. Was that something that you guys were aware of and conscious of going in, that this is kind of a long-standing history between your two brands, or is it?
I mean, it's not lost to us. I mean, we have great long relationship with them on OnStar, also on fuel cell research. So like the office that Emilio and I work out of in Michigan is the R&D office of Honda, working on the fuel cell with General Motors. So we do collaborate that way. So we have fuel cell, we have battery. So there's a lot of a long history, not just that V6 with the Saturn. So it's something we enjoy.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'll edit out this question because it's going to be a dumb question. But if I was a smart person, what would I ask you that like other people haven't asked you that you'd be like, oh yeah, that's really cool, we have a really great answer for that?
Oh yeah, actually yeah. You know what? I just read I read this in an internal story for Honda, and Joe, this is really important, is that the number one reason why customers buy a Prologue is because it's a Honda.
Yeah. Well, and that's wild, right? Because like, I think that's a very fair statement, because I love that, because I think that I would be in that boat as well, because I trust the experience. I trust the dealer experience.
The dealer network, the salespeople, the service department. And
and you also know the way that Honda has always approached not only quality control, but also customer care and customer relationships. And you do feel, again, back to the old line, you meet the nicest people on a Honda, right? The way that Honda dealers traditionally have trained their staff feels very different than when you're in a Chevy store or a GMC store. I think that's a tremendous point. And even though it's not anything to do with engineering or electrical engineering, I think, because it's a Honda and it meets those Honda standards to the point that they were willing to put that H on it, and that H does mean something to a lot of consumers.
Yeah, you're right.
Emilio, anything? Close us out.
I think from development side, something that was key also was that we had our evaluators, evaluating these cars, even though it was a collaboration. We basically brought our evaluators from Japan and from Ohio, to actually judge the car, like whether you're talking performance, like ride and handling or audio systems. Like there was our evaluator, or there were our evaluators were there, when we were checking the car, making sure that it was actually a Honda.
That's awesome, guys. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jessica Finney, for helping us put this together. For everybody who is listening to this on their, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or watching this on YouTube, if they want to follow along with what you're doing at Prologue and at Honda, what's the best place for them to do that?
Honda.com. Come visit.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Once again, Jason Hwang, Emilio Sanchez, thanks so much for being on the show. If you liked what you heard, we are always excited to have guests, and we want to definitely find more guests from the EV space that are interesting to you. So if there's someone you want to talk to, a guest you'd like to have on the show, please be sure to let us know in the comments. We'll do everything we can to get them on. Be sure to like and subscribe as you're listening to this, and we've got more Quick Charge coming up for you next week.